I am here with Jill Baake, and I am so excited, as always, to talk to people that are just so in touch and in tune with personal development and really helping people thrive, right?
Woo-hoo.
In life. Jill, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today, Nikki?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm excited because you're helping moms, and you are a mom of two, correct?
That's correct. I have a 12-year-old son, Nathan, and a 9-year-old daughter, Rylan. And actually, by the time this makes it to our viewers, they will be 13 and 10, which feels very different than 9 and 12. So I'm heading into a new era of parenting.
Mm-hmm. What have you thought about motherhood so far and all your 13 years of motherhooding?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because I just had a thought around that. I've been, as you, I'm constantly reading and trying to figure out new things. And I recently was reading something about the 10,000 hours to mastery. There's some psychologists or studiers or whatever that have decided that in order to master a task, you have to practice that task for 10,000 hours. And it occurred to me that now that my kids are going to be 13 and 10, I got my 10,000 hours. Like I'm in this sweet spot. Now I can call myself a master in my relationships with my kids, which is kind of a neat place to be.
That's a really great perspective on motherhood. I felt like for the first 5 years, I was really failing. And, now motherhood just seems very natural to me. So yeah, that's very interesting. I do believe that the theory there, you're on to something there, Jill.
Definitely not my theory, but something that I was just recently reading and kind of doing some math in my head. So the average person, that takes around 10 years of practicing something to get at that place of mastery. So it's just kind of a fun way to think about it. And especially because the stages of parenting move really quickly. So you might have had your 10,000 hours of infantness and you got that part figured out, but then you're into the next thing. And there's sort of this expectation that, well, because I got good at that part, now I should be good at this next part. And that's really not fair. It's not fair to expect yourself to be a master at something that you've never experienced before. And, when you're building relationships with your kids or you're building any relationships, that's an evolutional sort of thing. And so expecting ourselves to have it all figured out, I think is one of the challenges of motherhood, that there really isn't that place where you're going to have it all figured out. And so I think part of what we can talk about today is, all right, so if you're not going to get it all figured out, then what the heck do you do about it? And how do you gain a level of competency and confidence in how you're experiencing the journey and how you are interacting with your kids, if it really is in fact true that it's impossible to master it, unless you're going to have 10 kids and you already got 10 kids under 10,000 hours under your belt before that 10th one comes along. That certainly is not my plan for parenting. So there's got to be another way.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now you have a book called I Love Me Mom.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
So I wrote I Love Me Mom because I noticed that there was a pretty significant disconnect between how the moms that I was experiencing felt about themselves and the way that they wanted their children to experience life. So I made some assumptions in the book. I assumed that we all want our kids to grow up to be confident and happy and successful and curious and joyful and some of these things. So when I think about my kids becoming adults and where I would like to see them go in their lives, I use really positive terms. I want them to be contributing, and I want them to be respectful, and I want them to be energetic and engaged in life and all of this cool stuff. And so the flip side of that is when we recognize that we are primary role models, I began to observe moms. And what I saw was extreme amounts of stress, expert level worry, tons of second guessing, very low self-worth, low self-esteem, low confidence. And what feels really true to me is that our kids are really watching who we're being. They're not just listening to the things that we're saying or interacting with the things that we're exposing them to. They really are watching, and they're really observing, and they're taking on who we are as that model of how they're supposed to be as adults.
Yeah.
And part of this thinking was prompted, I tell a story in the book, when my son was just 2 years old, still in the front part of the shopping cart, he reached behind him and grabbed a stick of deodorant from the shopping cart and put it on like this, just for fun. And I'm like, whoa, he's 2. Certainly we had never had a conversation about what deodorant is or why you would do that. He had seen either his dad or I do that at some point, and he was modeling what he was seeing. And so it started to connect some pieces for me about my kids are really, really tuned into who I'm being and how I'm living my life on a moment-to-moment basis. And am I being somebody that I want my kids to emulate? Am I being the things that I want them to be when they arrive at this spot in adulthood? If I want my kids to be confident and happy and engaged and productive, am I showing them happy and confident and engaged and productive? And so the work of parenting shifted for me from a place of, okay, I need to get these kids to be happy and productive and confident, to, okay, I need to figure out how to be happy and confident and productive. If that's what I want for them, then that's the work I need to do for me. And it really shifted the dynamic of parenting in my life.
That's interesting. I would find it particularly tough to show that to your children with a spouse, with your significant other, because if you're trying to role model something and your spouse is trying to model something different, that can be really interesting on how to show your children your perspective and how you want to model life for them. It could be 2 different ways, one that your husband is showing and the other way that you're showing.
Right. That's an interesting perspective. And where I would take that is what I believe to be true ultimately is personal responsibility. And so, yes, are my kids picking up things from their dad? Are they picking up things from school? Are they picking up things from TV and screen time? Yes, they absolutely are.
Yeah.
And I have a role in how they digest that information. But ultimately, my responsibility comes back to me. And that's where I can take responsibility. So where that shift comes in is I take less responsibility for what my kids are exposed to, because I don't want to protect them from being exposed from the world. They're not going to live in a bubble. We do leave the house. They do go to public school. They are going to be exposed to different aspects of life.
Right.
And so as opposed to taking responsibility for that and what they're being exposed to outside of me, I take more responsibility for who I'm being in that story. So I don't take responsibility for who their dad's being in their story. I take responsibility for who I'm being in that story. And I trust my ability to role model from that place. And I trust my kids' ability to discern what's going to feel better. And so now when they're in a social situation, they're at school, they're out in life, and something happens or they're experiencing something, they now have experiences with me that feel a certain way. And then they get to choose which feels better. Does it feel better when I'm in this relationship over here that's being operated from a place of trust and love and personal responsibility? Or do I feel better when I'm in this place over here where I'm being influenced and maybe not treated as well, or maybe there's other factors at play? And so then they have the opportunity to discern who they want to be in those stories.
Really just taking responsibility for your own actions as a mom, and really really being careful of always of your words, of your actions, and portraying, and living really who you want to be as a mom. I
Right.
love that. I really do. I think that that's a really great way to think about motherhood and parenting in a different way. And not to always worry about what the outsiders are doing, just to really focus on the inward uh, part of being a mom.
Well, and I think that's part of the interesting part of the story is,
Mhm.
as moms, our kids are out in the world, and they are extensions of us. They are representations of what we're doing. And we want them to represent themselves in a positive way that reflects well on us. I mean, that's human nature. We want our
Yeah.
kids to behave well when they're out in the world. And yet, the ownership of who we're being
Hmm.
often falls by the wayside. So it's an interesting kind of thing. Like, well, I want my kids to behave this certain way, not always recognizing that I need to behave in the way that feels good to me as well.
Right.
And I need to put in the time and energy to become a person that operates in a way that I'm proud of,
Yeah.
that does live in a way that exemplifies the love and
Mhm.
personal responsibility that's important to me. And if it's not love and responsibility that are important to you, then I owe it to myself to figure out, what are those values? What are those things that are
Right.
important to me? How do I want to represent myself
Right.
in the world?
Yeah, I love that. Now, I heard that you have the answer to making mom life a little easier.
Oh, all the answers. All the answers. That's why I
Jill
live
has all the answers,
in
everybody.
my $1 billion penthouse suite, overlooking the lake. No. Um, there are some answers. There are some really um, simplified answers, and we've already sort of touched on them. The key to making mom life better is to be you, and to do the work that it takes to understand who you are, to put systems in place that allow you to keep learning and growing and exploring. Um, to forgive yourself when it doesn't go the way that you think it's supposed to, because learning is messy, and the journey of being a mom really is about learning, because like I said, most of us don't do it enough. We're not going to do it 10 times to get good by the 10th time around. And so it is always going to be a new experience and a learning experience for every single one of us. And so there's going to be times where it's not ideal and it doesn't look the way we think it's supposed to, and we're not going to put it on a postcard. And so learning how to come back home and say, I'm okay, and I still love myself, even though that story didn't go the way that I wanted it to. And how can I rebound from that? And how would I like to show up the next time? And what am I learning from that?
Mhm.
So how do we make mom life easier? We give ourselves permission to be human. Give ourselves permission to be human beings that are
Boom.
exploring life and learning things and
Dang.
and getting messy. And that's really, really, really okay.
I love that.
And when we do that, we're showing our kids that it's okay to be human. It's okay
Mhm.
to get messy. It's okay to step in it once in a while. And it's
Yeah.
more about what we do next and how we rebound from that and what we learn from that than it is about trying to create some perfect persona of family life, or of our relationships with our kids, or of our relationships with ourselves. So really, if I were to pick like one key, like what is the key to making mom life better? Get good with your relationship with yourself. Do it.
Mm.
Spend the time, get to know yourself, make it a priority to fall in love with who you are. That love that you have for those little people in your life
Right.
shows you that that love is available to you. And if you're not routing that back to yourself in some capacity, again, you're modeling that disconnect. Then you're telling your kids, I love you so much, and you're so amazing, and you can do anything you want with this life, but I kind of suck over here. So
Yeah.
don't pay attention to that. Don't listen to the voices in my head. You make sure you're doing it this other way. And the reality is, those voices come from what they're watching. We're watching our moms to see how do grown-ups work in this world? How do I show up in life? And so you make mom life easier by building a relationship with yourself by whatever means necessary. Read the books, have the hard conversations, hire the coach, watch the TED Talk, do whatever it is that allows you to get into that space of self-exploration, because that's where the magic of parenting really lies, is in knowing that I'm okay. I've got me. I can handle this life. I've got a good relationship with myself. I'm in a place of love with myself. Therefore, I can trust that and believe that my kids will have the same, because that's what I'm showing them how to do.
Yeah. So I totally love that. And at the same time, I feel that we're always going to be evolving. It's
Mhm.
when it's that moment when you think you have it figured out, you don't have anything figured out. You're just
Uh-huh.
going, oh, I read the books, but if you don't apply it to your life and you don't live it every day, then there's going to be certain things that come at you that kind of throw you, and you're like, wow, another life lesson. Wow, another one, and
Uh-huh.
it's just constantly showing up as all these new lessons for you to learn. And to show your kids that it's okay to make mistakes, that you are always constantly learning as a
Mhm.
mom, is so, so important. And I think that just really, you know, takes what you said and then takes it a little bit, further to where, it's okay to be human, like what you
Yeah.
said, right? Because life is always going to show you different lessons. And I love that about motherhood. And I love that about life and being a woman.
Mhm.
We get to show up and show other humans how to be human, essentially, and then we're going to make mistakes and learn from them.
Yes. And what I
So
love
yeah.
about what you said, Nikki, is it wraps around to sort of where we started with mastery, that
Yeah.
there is no mastery level in parenting. There's always going to be learning. And so that idea of, I think I've got it figured out, we can apply that
Hmm.
to the concept of learning. So instead of
Yeah.
trying to figure out the concepts and saying, yeah, I got that one, I know how to be that, or I know how to do that, when
Mm.
we apply that concept of mastery to the art of learning, like,
Yeah.
ooh, I'm learning that, and now I'm learning this, and now I'm learning this, and now I'm practicing this, then that evolutionary journey is a little less about the expectation and disappointment, or that I got it figured out, oh crap, I landed on my head, like that weird pendulum swing that we can do. And it becomes more of this consistent balance of, oh, what am I learning now? Oh, what am I learning now? Oh, cool, I'm learning something else. And then
Right.
again, when we model that for our kids, we allow them the space to be lifelong learners and not
Right.
have to have that piece of, I've got it all figured out. We don't have to
Right.
get to mastery of the different experiences. We get to the mastery of the navigation, we get to the mastery of the learning, so
Right.
that that process becomes easier, it becomes more smooth, because when the focus is on the learning rather than the outcome, now we're
Hmm.
measuring it in a totally different way.
This brings me to the point when I was a new mom, and all the non-moms were telling me or giving me advice. So I don't take advice from women who are not moms. Okay? They think that they know something because they're preparing themselves for motherhood, so they read all the books, right?
Mhm.
They think that they are the masters because they've watched and they have observed their sisters being moms or their friends being moms, and they've been around children, so that they know now what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, and now they're giving they're giving advice to moms. This is how it goes down. They give their advice as a non-mom, then then the mom kind of laughs and goes, okay. And then they become moms. And then motherhood takes them for a whole new ride,
Mhm.
right? And then they
Mhm.
go back to that mom and they say, I am so sorry. I had no idea how hard this was.
Mhm.
I can't even tell you how many times that has happened to me. Countless, actually, where I had just been talking about something and this non-mom had something to say. And then she came back and was like, I am so sorry. Motherhood is so hard. And I'm like, yeah, that's why we need to talk about it. That's why the things that really do, you know, not harm us, but the things that really weigh on our shoulders every single day as moms need to be talked about.
Mhm.
So I love that.
And I do think that's the key. I agree with you, is having that community of people that you can be human with. And there are aspects of it that are challenging for sure. And yet there's sort of a cautionary piece for me around accepting that belief that being
Mm-hmm.
a mom is hard, because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm in a different phase of parenting now, but when I look back on my journey of being a mom equipped with
Yeah.
this knowledge of, okay, I'm responsible for me, everything else works itself out. um, when I think of my experience of a mom, that's not where I go. I don't go
Mm-hmm.
to, oh, being a mom is hard. And I think we have to be a little bit careful about that,
Yeah.
because if that's the sort of water cooler chatter around parenting, we're perpetuating that idea that
Yeah.
the only way through this is to slug and grind and scrape ourselves up and be miserable and grind our way through until we achieve some level of proficiency, in which maybe then we can take a deep breath and it's a little more balanced. But
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think in
want
the
to I don't want to
beginning, it's,
perpetuate the myth that parenting has to be
yeah.
hard, because I don't
No,
think it
you're
does.
right. Totally. I agree with you. I think in the beginning, though, every mom has that sleep deprivation, and there's that moment of, wow, I really have to take care of somebody else for the
Yeah,
rest of its life,
right.
and that portrays as heavy and kind of hard, you know.
Absolutely. And it is absolutely a humongous life transition. I am with you
Yeah,
100%
totally.
on that idea. And I would suggest that as experienced moms, that's something we can help newer moms with,
Right.
is one, recognizing the temporariness of that chapter of parenting, because eventually they all sleep. Eventually they all get there
Yeah,
eventually, and some
right.
take longer and whatever, but you will get back to being able to sleep at some point. um, and how do we support with some of these ideas of, it's okay to still take care of yourself, and how do we equip new moms with the right type of support? Because um, there is a comfort when another mom says to you, yeah, it's a lot and it's a big transition, and sleep deprivation is a real thing, and mom brain is a real thing. There is comfort in that camaraderie. And yet um, I would like to be looking at, and you're okay, and you're going to make it. And what can I do to help you get through this chapter? And what are you doing to support yourself while this is going on? And
Mm-hmm.
what other things can you soften so that you can be more present in the experience of this amazing infant that is doing such cool stuff every single day? Because what can happen is we get so caught up in the sleep deprivation and the diapers and the food and this and that and the heart of it, that we
Mm-hmm.
miss it. We
Yeah,
miss it.
totally.
And that's a bummer, because
Yeah.
that time period does go really,
And
really
I think it's a
fast.
disconnect, which really
Yes.
brings us to the point of building confident relationships with your children,
Hmm.
because if you're in a disconnected place with your kids and you're so hyper focused on the outside, on the diapers and the lack of sleep and your own mental
Rewiring.
yeah, you're like, I just got hit by a Mack truck, I'm not sure how to get up from this kind of thing. That can cause a disconnect and a really disconnective relationship with your kids growing as they grow up.
Hmm.
So how do you build really good confident relationships with your kids from the beginning, from the start?
I think a couple things come into play. One, going through the journey of parenting with curiosity instead of perfection is one shift that I think makes a tremendous difference. Because, and even now that I've been at this for almost 13 years, um, there is no perfect. There's no perfect in our relationships. There's no perfect in our relationships with our siblings or our friends or our partners or our parents. And so that idea that we could get to a spot where it's all figured out and perfect, there is tremendous value in letting that go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can replace that with a curiosity of, who are you today? And what can I get to know about you now? And what could you teach me today? And so again, shifting into that learner's mindset, yeah, you're the role model there. You are showing them how to be big in this world. And yet that doesn't mean that you have to have it all figured out. And that's a beautiful little contrast. That's a
Mm-hmm.
cool little space to dance, that you are showing them how to be human. You're not showing them how to be perfect. You're showing them how to be grown and be responsible and be loving, and those things that you've decided are important to you. So shifting into curiosity, I think, is a big part of building those relationships with your kids from the beginning. A personal belief that I have that feels really true to me, and I'm just going to invite folks that are watching and you, Nikki, to try it on. I believe that each generation of children comes in smarter. I think they come in with better tools. I think they come in with awarenesses that we as adults have either lost sight of or maybe never had to begin with. They come in to a fresh experience. And as adults, it's very challenging for us to set aside everything we've been through and really look at life as a fresh experience. And so what that means to me is, if I really believe that my kids are smarter and better equipped at 0 than I am at 30, then that changes the dynamic of that relationship. So now I'm looking at my kids for what I can learn from them, instead of looking at them as, what do I need to teach them? And that shift in dynamic equalizes a relationship and allows it to become that loving, confident exchange that I personally want with my kids. Now, caveat on that, that doesn't mean that I don't set boundaries. I absolutely set boundaries. I absolutely have expectations for behavior for my kids. I absolutely have respect thresholds in how I will be treated in those relationships. So I'm not saying be friends with your kids and just trust that they've got everything that they need and your only job is to just love everything that they do. What I am suggesting is that maintaining their sense of power and intellect and choice along the journey changes the ride, right? When I can trust that my kids are really well equipped for this life, and my job is to hold clear boundaries so they know where they can dance, and my job is to love them as they're learning and getting messy, and my job is to continue building who I am as a human being and continue learning and growing within myself. Now that dynamic operates totally differently. Now I'm not a source of fear. I'm not somebody that needs to be rebelled against. And you may check back with me in 4 or 5 years once I've navigated the teenage years, because admittedly we're at 13 right now. But what I can tell you about 13 is that I enjoy the heck out of my son, and he is just a delightful young man. And I'm not seeing those aspects of power struggle and rebellion, because it's important to me that he does feel powerful, and it's important that he does have choice, and that he is able to navigate some of his circumstances in his way, based on what's working for him. So as we're building relationships with our kids, those key factors are recognizing I don't have it all figured out. So I'm not going to hold that stance as a parent that I've got it all figured out. I'm going to rely on my kids to help figure some of that stuff out, because if it's their story, I may not be the one that can figure it out. So rather than trying to impose my law on what they're working through, being able to hold space in a different way with them allows us to have a confident, loving relationship without so much of the angst and struggle.
Wow. Jill, that was very, very powerful.
Okay.
That was very powerful. I hope that it just resonated with everybody, because that was so profound. I hope that people that can go back and listen to that again, that was extremely profound. And, really those nuggets of aha moments were in there, and some tweetables were in there.
Ooh.
And and I think that was really profound and amazing to learn from your children, not to always be their teacher, but to learn from them and mirror that's really cool. I love that.
And how powerful we feel. So if I'm a young child, I'm 10, 12, however many years old, and my parent is genuinely interested in my perspective on life or how I see something, it's not rocket science to recognize that that's going to allow them to stand more in their power and explore those places within themselves and build that relationship with themselves. Because ultimately, right, as an adult, I had to build that relationship with myself, because it wasn't something that was modeled for me. It wasn't something that was understood by my parents. And to no fault of my parents, I have delightful parents. They are extremely loving and caring and well-intentioned. And yet, growing up with a sense of self-worth and confidence and that learner's mindset, those were things that I had to teach myself as an adult. Those were things that I had to reprogram because they became important to me. And so now that I'm modeling confidence and self-reflection and learning, it's very cool to see those things already exemplified in my kids, and seeing sort of the bulletproofness that comes with them being strong in their own power and being less susceptible to the things that are happening around them, and less programmable, quite frankly, because now that I'm not in that space of, I'm going to teach you this, you need to learn this, I'm going to teach you this, and I'm letting them shine through. Now when their friends are like, well, you should do this, or you should be this, or this is what's cool, they have different systems to process that information. That feels foreign versus when we model that, oh, I'll teach you how to do that, I'll train you, I'll get you up to speed. Then when other outside influences come in, that spot is really ripe. And our kids are really open to learning things from all kinds of outside influences, instead of coming from that position of strength and power and what's true for them.
Right. Fantastic, Jill. Thank you so much. Jill, where can we find your book?
You can find the book on Amazon. Again, it's called I Love Me, Mom. You can also find more at thrivehumancapital.com. So I'm a part of an amazing group of people that work really intently on spreading this mission of love and personal responsibility, not only to parents, but to athletes and business owners and any type of people. We want to find you wherever you are. So we have divisions set up for lifestyle, business, and sport to help reach people, because people deserve to feel good. They deserve to find that inner confidence. They deserve to cultivate self-love and be in that spot of self-nurturing and knowing that you're okay on this planet and you've got this, and you're gonna find your way through. And so that's what we're out in the world. There's 8 of us right now out spreading that mission. So you can learn lots more about us, thrivehumancapital.com.
Thank you, Jill.
And the book will be out there as well.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you having me on, Nikki. This has been super fun.
I hope you come back.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
We dance